they might be self-aware.
10 episodes of They Might Be Self-Aware. We have entered into the double digits. And I guess, is this a birthday celebration, Daniel? Or are you now one of the shy kids? What's going on here?
Oh yeah, no, I'm just AI generated now. We were talking about replacing ourselves, and so instead of "Hi, I'm Daniel Bishop," it's "Hi, I'm probably generated by Sora."
Maybe generated by Sora. Maybe just holding a balloon in front of your face.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. How would we be able to tell? I don't know.
I'll tell you what I wasn't able to tell, which is all of those Sora videos that came out right when they first started showing the service were extremely impressive. And then, not too long ago, they said, hey, we gave it to some Hollywood types to see what they could come up with. Mm-hmm. And Shy Kids, a studio, came out with, I think they call it Airhead. And it's about a guy whose head is a balloon. It's a cute little, like, I don't know if documentary is the right term, but it's a couple minutes long. Yeah. Really, really cool video. And they used Sora for it, and that's very exciting. And then a making of video came out. And I said, oh, it turns out, just like with any other video making, there's a bunch of editing that went on. That wasn't all just generated by Sora. There's some bits that they showed the behind the scenes of they changed the, there was a head and a balloon, and then they removed the head.
The premise of it is that this guy has a balloon for his head.
Right.
And so then we all believe that they were typing into Sora, man with balloon head does various activities.
And that was it. It turns out it wasn't just that. And I'm very excited about that, and I'll tell you why. Because it means that Sora and ChatGPT and all those things are being used more as tools instead of a be-all, end-all. If someone says, I'm going to use Sora to make this really cool thing and still have humans, highly technical, skilled, paid humans that are going to edit it and turn this more into a vision that's been made instead of just, I hit the art button and art popped out. I'm excited to see that this is something that is being used in an artistic way that is still incorporating human effort into it. So, neat. Not as neat as it originally looked like it was. Still a very cool tool. Not that we're allowed to play with it yet. Not that I'm salty about that. But I am really excited that people are using it not to just say, I made an art. It's Sora made this thing and we turned it into art with human assistance.
I don't know. We finally got our AI generated labels. Everyone's been figuring out, we got to label the stuff. We're going to say it's AI generated. And now, just as soon as we got the label, AI generated video, you can't trust that it was generated by AI. In fact, there were humans involved. And now I need my human
way around.
Yes, human generated video needs to be labeled if a human was used. Because how else am I supposed to know? How else am I supposed to make sense of this crazy, crazy world we live in?
It's only fair. If we're going to force AIs and robots to let us know when AIs and robots did a thing, I think we should let people know that humans were involved in a project.
The Shy Kids, which may or may not actually be shy, announced that they are doing a sequel. And the sequel will have principal photography. They are not going to... They said they might incorporate some elements of Sora. They apparently do still have access to it. But for the second one, they've decided to actually go out into the real world and film it. They weren't jumping at the bit to do another one. They said it was a lot of trial and error, and apparently there's a long delay. So you input a prompt similar to how ChatGPT works, and then you wait about 30 minutes to get back a low resolution video. And the video is wrong a lot. So you tweak the prompt, each time waiting about 30 minutes. So they also said that they would load up a whole bunch of prompts so that, again, they could come back in a couple hours and I've got 10 videos to review. And then when they found one that they liked, they would just basically make small tweaks to that, generate a whole bunch, take the best of the bunch, and then that would become, one bit of. But it sounded like it was. It was interesting, but if they knew what they wanted to make, this would not be the way that they would choose to make it yet. It's not that level yet.
I do the same thing when I use something like Midjourney, for example, or a local stable diffusion, where I have this idea in my head and I have aphantasia. So I actually, when I imagine a field full of flowers, I don't see anything. Like a lot of people apparently actually visualize in their head some field of flowers or whatever. I don't.
You can't see the field of flowers?
Nothing. And I literally thought it was a like a turn of phrase. It was just something people said, like, in my mind's eye, I can see this thing.
No, I definitely see
of
the
course,
flowers.
no one can actually imagine something and see it in their head. And apparently most people can actually do that.
Yeah.
So I instead have like a series of facts of what would be in the field of flowers. And I can describe what a field of flowers might contain. But I don't see any of that. So I like to use tools like Midjourney to say, I had this idea and I literally don't know what it would look like. Please make something kind of like, and then something, you'll get 4 images. And, that was kind of like, I guess, what I was imagining. And it's always a surprise to me because I don't know what it would look like. I just have a collection of like, there'd be, maybe it's a rolling field, or maybe it's a flat field, or is it sunflowers, or is it bluebonnets, or is it this? And like, until the generator pops out with some examples, I didn't know. And maybe I do have some more aspects of it, but like that creative, and I am saying it's creative, that creative aspect from something like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Sora, whatever, to me is a pleasant surprise every time I see it. But every time I see it, I now know a little bit more of what I do or don't want. And the same thing probably happened to the Shy Kids, of they get this thing back and someone had an idea of how the shot would go. It was panning left to right or right to left. Oh, we need to redo it again, change the prompt. And so I'll go through and change the prompt a bunch. But you can change the prompt all you want and still not end up with what you want. I dare anyone listening to this to try and get Midjourney to make you a centaur. It's not going to happen. You'll get lots of people riding a horse or some guy or gal or whatever. You're not going to get centaur.
And I guess and Shy Kids didn't get theirs, and that's why they opened up After Effects and edited the video and moved the balloon around so it was over the head and changed the color of the balloon and other tweaks in order to deliver on their creative vision.
But they used it as a tool, and that's what really excites me. Because we've talked plenty, as have lots of other people, about how people are using ChatGPT to just cheat on essays or to completely write books or articles or this or that. But we're getting into a point where people are seeing this as a tool and using it as a tool instead of a be-all, end-all. And so that's what really excites me. Or even just inspiration. You mentioned the Shy Kids are going to do a real sequel to Airhead, or, again, whatever the title was. That's great. They used an AI tool, ML tool, whatever, and got a thing and knew it wasn't quite what they wanted and then went out and made it themselves. That, to me, is one of the best outcomes of using this kind of technology. Use it as inspiration, as a draft, In filmmaking, often leverage what we call previs tools. And I'm sure lots of industries use similar corollaries, but where you try to visualize the shots before you go out and make them, because capturing principal photography can be very expensive, and B, there might be a better way that you only realize once you see the output of your vision. So perhaps it's a very effective. You don't know till you've
tool.
done it. Yeah. Storyboarding. Let's use Midjourney and stuff for things like storyboarding.
Sure,
it's part of a
storyboarding, an
creative
example
process.
of previs.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I don't know anything about that whole realm.
Well, most of you watching probably know who we are, but just in case you don't, after 10 episodes, you're still like, who are these folks? I am Hunter Powers, and I'm joined by none other than Balloonhead himself.
The one and only Daniel Bishop. That's not true. There's a lot of Daniel Bishops out there, and Dan Bishops and Danny Bishops and Danielle Bishops. There used to be a Facebook group dedicated to all of us, but I'm the only me that I can think of.
So and the test is we should ask you to think of something in your head and describe it to us. And then
maybe
if the answer is like, I don't know, then you know it's the real one.
What makes me unique? I can't see stuff in my head, and I got that thing where cilantro tastes like soap.
So apparently you don't need to be able to see something in your head in order to become truly intelligent. But one of the questions AI researchers are are racking their brains with right now is, does an AI need a body in order to become truly intelligent? Can they become this sentient being without ever having a body, without ever having interacted with the physical world, which of course all of us have? That is one advantage we have for now. And Meta took a look at this problem, their researchers, and they came back and said, yes, it does.
This is just the allegory of the cave or something, right? Like, we're revisiting ancient philosophy via robotics. You can describe the world to an AI as much as you want, for as long as you want, but it's not the same as actually experiencing something. And I feel like as soon as you say that to anyone, most people would probably agree. Like, yeah, you can describe a taste as much as you want, but until you give a tongue to a robot, it'll never really know why kids love Cinnamon Toast Crunch so much. And
Yeah,
I want robots to know why. But no, yes, I want robots to know why kids love Cinnamon Toast Crunch so much. I think that's a really important thing, for good reasons that I can't elucidate on right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we definitely understand that you can't just have theoretical knowledge about a thing and expect to become an expert in it. You have to go out and actually interact with that thing and try it out. You can only get so far with, the quote unquote book knowledge, and especially in activities that are, physical related, but in everything. All right, you're going to become an incredible stock trader. Great, read all the history of stocks, read about all the math and all that. But until you actually go out and are performing live trades on a exchange.
The modern stock market definitely still has people waving those little strips of paper around on a big floor, right?
Yeah, until you can go out and perform live trades on an exchange, it's all just theoretical, and you will probably get your something handed to you that first time. So much of, and that's an example that could be theoretically done in a pure digital sense, but so much of what we want our AIs to be able to do requires physical interaction. So they probably do need to come out and interact with the real world if they ever are going to be our, our saviors or our Terminators 1.
I think there's aspects of that can be fairly immediately obvious. For example, let's say we talked last episode about a firefighting robot. I mentioned it anyways. There's a firefighting robot could run into a house and like save someone that maybe a real firefighter just wouldn't quite be able or willing to do because it'd be too dangerous. Any robot that does that needs to have sensors to see that it is over a certain heat level or that it has X% of its fire retardant foam or whatever in it left. You have to be able to experience the world around you in order to affect it properly. Even if all of this comes down to a somewhere between 0 and 1 reward function per second that the robot is getting, that robot still needs to know stuff that influences that set of decisions. And granted, it still all ends up being just a bunch of numbers going into an algorithm somewhere, but those numbers have to come from somewhere. And it could be touch. We've seen robots being able to like hold glassware has really gotten a lot better in the last years. There have to be sensors that are like the amount of pressure being put on the thing, a camera that sees, oh, this is glass and I expect it's this thick and I know this about glass, so you can apply so many newtons of force before it's probably going to break. Oh, it broke, reward function 0. That's the body. That's embodiment. It doesn't have to be flesh and like fingers and whatever. It could be horrible spider robot legs and the charge on your laser beam or whatever. But surely some sort of embodiment is going to be necessary for these things to do the best. And they need to learn too. Learn from mistakes. Devon AI. You remember how we were talking about that?
Yes, I remember Devon.
Engineer.
Bit of a jerk.
Until that software engineer goes into a code review and learns from mistakes instead of just has individual outputs of I made a thing sort of end of statement. That feedback loop is, I think, what makes us, maybe not all of it, but it helps toward making us living, breathing, thinking creatures. And that thinking involves learning over time. So give it a body, give it a memory.
Well, the embodiment hypothesis, as Meta has coined it, suggests that we need a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton in order for the AI to truly become sentient one day, and that until they have that functionality, they can't really become self-aware.
We got there. All right, folks, thanks for joining us this episode. No, it's a little early
that
for
might not be all. They may need more than just the what was the Terminator quote? The cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton. They might also need religion.
I've seen some episodes of Futurama that kind of delve into that. Sure.
You were the one who first pointed me towards this issue in Germany. I don't know if you want to introduce the premise here.
Yeah. So there are a set of stores. You'll have to forgive me for all the Germans listening to this.
This is why I wanted you to intro the story.
Tegut? I'm going to say Tegut, maybe. There are a set of stores that are amounts of automated. We've seen this in the U.S. with like Amazon trying to do stores where you just grab stuff and walk out, and there's problems with those. Maybe we can talk about that another time. But there is a law in Germany called the Sonntagsruhe. I think Ruhe is law. Sonntag is Sunday, or rule. Sunday rule. It's a law. It's a law that says Sundays are a day of rest, and that might affect robot-run businesses. Now, there are computers that exist that don't have to be turned off on Sundays or whatever, but I think we're getting to a point where a robot is sufficiently complex to the point where we're going to say, okay, this being needs to rest on Sundays, which immediately kind of comes up against one of the promises of robotics, right? The promise is a being that never tires, that could work 24 hours a day. Do we avoid the Terminator apocalypse by giving them a day off?
There's and maybe I'll find it and drop it in the show notes. But there's this theory about how maybe you need to be like really nice to the robots now because they're going to remember, and when the day comes, right, there will be the robot rapturing. And so it's to your advantage to treat them as nicely as possible today, because
I'm sorry, go back to that. I want to hear robot rapturing one more time.
The robot rapturing, yeah, because they're going to remember. They're going to remember all the technology is going to remember how you treated it every time you smashed your keyboard in frustration over the output of something, and curse because it's listening at all times, of course, right?
Do unto others. There have been some papers said or written that said something like your ChatGPTs literally perform better when you're nice to them. When you phrase things as questions instead of demands, when you say please and thank you as part of like an ongoing conversation. If we're trying to emulate how people talk and act through these machines, it sort of follows that we're going to be giving them moral systems, or we're going to be giving them social niceties. As these robots become more embodied, do we force robots to follow table manners?
I know there was also, and this is a few years ago, there were a number of stories around, or I don't know, maybe I just read one article about it, but parents that were concerned with how their children were interacting with the smart assistants, like, I won't say the words, we won't key anything, whether it's Amazons or Apples or Googles. They were talking to these assistants in a very blunt way, and they weren't being friendly and saying thank you and nice. And it does raise, and so they were concerned that this might, they'll have the same behavior with other humans, where it would not be appropriate to just be so demanding and curt. But
of a being,
of a human,
whether it be
yes, and so they wanted their children to speak with we'll call them AI assistants in a very sort of polite and way. But yeah, like
I do that. I have a 2-year-old, and I've been teaching her to say thank you to our home devices whenever they
thank you AI.
do. Yeah, it's just like I don't know. If you give something a human sounding voice, treat it nicely, like you would a person. People have been doing this since there have been pet rocks. Something about humans loves to personify stuff. If you look at car designs, you can kind of see a face in a lot of them. It's purposeful. We like to anthropomorphize stuff. We like to humanize inanimate objects or non-human living beings. And I think AI is absolutely falling into that same sort of case. And it should treat it, not just to avoid the Terminator scenario, but like if we're going to have more and more capable agents, beings, LLM, whatever, AIs, call them whatever you will, if these are going to be more and more part of our lives, don't treat them like slaves. Treat them like people that you're collaborating with. Treat them nicely. Not because a law says so, it's the right thing to do.
Where's the line? I mean, so like really you need to give them a day off?
Why not?
Because I can't think of any reason to, because decreased productivity, because it increases the cost of running it, because
but isn't the whole promise of the greater amount of labor being done by these to give people more time off? Like ultimately, we haven't drawn the full line yet, but we've talked about one reasonable end state of this is most of the manual work's done. We've got kind of UBI for everybody. Productivity's through the roof because robots are way more productive than people. Do we as a society have to be productive all the time? Capitalism says yes. I don't. I don't think that society has to be outputting stuff 24/7. Give the robots a day off. Give them 2 days off. We get 2 days off. Tell with it. Why not? Everybody gets the weekend.
Now, I would like you to just wink if you're just saying this so that future robots will look very favorably on you.
I'm blinking a SOS on my end over here. It's not just my allergies.
If this is it.
No, I really think that if we get to the point where we're talking about embodied robots that are walking, talking, remembering, growing, literally and figuratively feeling, or at least we get to the point where it's indistinguishable, are these real emotions? Are they not? Does it matter anymore? Once we're more into that point, which we're starting to get, give them the day off. I think so, right? You want the factory running 24/7. I can see it in your face. You couldn't hear it.
It's just so illogical to give. I can't get over it.
Does a bakery need to have people making croissants 24/7?
Generate crap for the sake of, like, I don't believe in make work, but given there's something to do and you can continue to better society, I mean, let the machines continue to better the society.
If a toilet paper factory makes all the rolls that they need to make and sell in 12 hours, does it need to run for 24 hours?
No, but they should figure out some other use of that facility, and maybe they lease it out the remainder of the time.
Yeah, I think there's a separation that needs to happen here. There is total productivity and there's necessary productivity. And like we have businesses that try to accomplish something. We worked at a tech firm together and we didn't have people. There were like some folks doing some labeling in other countries, but we didn't have like 3 sets of software engineers to make sure that the clock was going at all times. And frankly, like we could have, and other companies could, and gigantic companies like your Microsofts or whatever have offices all over the globe, and by virtue of time zones, they're working all the time. But if everybody was working in Redmond, I don't think Microsoft would say we have enough people and enough projects to have 3 shifts, and we're going to make sure that the Microsoft office is open 24 hours a day. And the same allotments to humans. Not to a robot arm on a automated floor for putting together cars, but if you have a humanoid robot, because we humanize things, because we put googly eyes on rocks and form emotional attachments to them, if you have a humanoid or a dog shaped or what, if it looks kind of like a creature, give it a couple days off. Why not?
Well, I think potentially the best argument for giving it the day off is at this point, again, because it's trained on all the human data, there is some chance you might get a better performance out of it if you give it the day off.
Sure. Same as with people.
What was the other one?
It also might be upset that you didn't give it the day off, and then you get your Terminator apocalypse.
There was the observation as we got towards the holidays of last year, some people noticed some large language models performing worse and developed the hypothesis that they had internalized the concept that we slow down at the end of the year because of all of the holidays, and have less output, and that they were following in suit.
Yeah. Timestamp all of your data, and you see the data is worse and slower and really dragging its feet at the end of December. It learns from that. Like it or not, we're trying to make these things more like people, and so I think we should be treating them more like people. And sooner rather than not. Again, not like a robot arm in a factory, but if it's an LLM or other quote-unquote AI model where we're getting toward like people levels of intelligence, even open models at this point are starting to match GPT-4, which is super, super exciting. But that, we've talked about this, we're getting into a point where more of the time, for more people in more circumstances, it's basically as good as a person. So treat it like one, I think.
Well, one of those peoples that we have in society today are fry cooks. Somewhere between a just a mechanical arm and an AI being. And there's now the AI gas station. I think there's 4 of them, but there are 4 of them that now have these. They're called Wingmen, AI powered fry cooking robots installed in them that can make your French fries 24 hours a day.
This is one of those overloadings of the term AI in my mind. I don't think it's ChatGPT or something of its ilk running that. There are vending machines in Europe. I think
Fuzzy
like
logic.
Sure, right. I've seen like a pizza robot vending machine where it has a bunch of pre-made doughs, and then it puts in a spiral a bunch of sauce and plops down some cheese and then cooks it. This is just a more complicated version of that, because when it comes to fry oil, you have to manage the temperature more, or make sure that it's, a webcam looking at it to see that they're the right amount of doneness, and shake it off right and clean up spills. And like getting into your McDonald's type use cases, they're more complicated. But I don't know. I like the fact that we're going to be able to do more of that. That's not the kind of work that I think people should have to do. And of course, some people say that's getting you from, like, it's stopping people from being able to get into the market by virtue of, like, well, all the entry level jobs are now gone. I think that's a big problem, and I don't have an answer for that.
You said that
you want to cut off anyone in the comments who's like, hey, but now people can't get like a first job. Yeah, I guess I kind of agree. If we get to the point where all of those entry level jobs get automated away, I don't know what we do about that.
You said that you don't really consider Wingman. And if Wingman, if you're listening, this is Daniel Bishop speaking, not Hunter Powers. But you don't really consider to be Wingman a legit AI. What would Wingman need to be able to do in order for you to recognize the great? I recognize the great Wingman if you're listening. But no, what's missing?
What's missing is preciseness of language. So AI, machine learning, all these, there's a lot of buzzwords that are being chucked around and can get you funding pretty easily if you're trying to start up something. You just have to slap large language model on it. And granted, that's starting to dry up from what I gather. But there are a lot of people who will use buzzwords to generate hype, to sell their product, or to get funding for it, or whatever. By some definitions, this is definitely AI. But a machine learning model that is not anywhere near what we would start ascribing personhood to, because it's a collection of sensors that doesn't have like an embodiment and can't talk to you and can't at least emulate having dreams for the future. This is just something that has 300 little sensors and like a gyroscope and whatever that says, okay, these fries are done, or this chicken is done, or I need to redo the breading on this one. It is machine learning. It is technically artificial intelligence. But when people hear AI, they're thinking Her and iRobot and Terminator and so on. And it is very not that. This is instead, from the perspective of a person looking at, a computer takes a couple of pictures, reads 300 little sensors, and then decides to crank up the temperature by 2 degrees. And I feel there's a world of difference between those, that we use the same word for it. And so it's unearned hype, in my opinion.
The great and powerful Wingman is not the only AI in the fast food space. Yum Brands, which covers KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and the Habit Burger Grill, which I've never heard of. Apparently they are creating an AI that you can talk to. Take that, Daniel Bishop. And the idea here is that they're going to use the AI to train their human employees, leveraging generative AI. They're going to, I guess, read all of their manuals and training materials that they previously have, and then attempt to program that into the humans and answer questions for them. Is this a good idea or is this a horrible idea?
A great idea. It is a fantastic idea. Let's ignore, we'll come back to it, but Pizza Hut and so on, looking at all of their training materials and a manager being able to say, what do I do in this situation? Take that same thought and now apply it to the medical space. There's a ton of literature and like specific studies on this kind of illness. And then somebody has a medication and that person didn't take their medication in the morning. And they want to know, should I take it right now and then still take, I have to take it 2 times a day. Should I take it at noon and at night because I missed my 9 a.m. or should I just wait? And like that is a question that has a medical significance. Someone up to potentially could die based on that. And then they message their overworked, understaffed medical clinic and they get a response in 24 to 48 business hours. And maybe that person's dead by then. This is obviously worst case scenario, but like something like that could happen. Generative AI hooked up to retrieval augmented generation. You've got an LLM and it's got access to studies. It's got access to all of the documentation for your specific medical history, all the conversations you've had with your doctor, everything in the literature about that, everything in the literature about your medication. And it says, if you skipped your medication, yes, take it again, or no, don't take it. And it can give you citing sources. This is where it says in the literature, it's not making any decision on its own. It's not going to be a doctor. It is merely telling you there is already existing documentation that says to do this. That can save lives. And there are companies that exist now that are banking on that exact same thing in the medical space. Now let's come back to Pizza Hut. Hey, I spilled 30 milliliters of oil on the floor. Is that what?
Milliliters?
Whatever it is.
Who says milliliters?
Oh, sorry, this is America. 0.001 football fields of oil on the floor. How long before it has to be cleaned? Whatever.
It's more like the pepperoni smells kind of funky.
Sure,
what should I do?
Right. And if there are pre-written rules of what you're supposed to do there, just because the employee doesn't have the handbook memorized, an app does. An app's got the whole damn thing right there, and it can triage questions coming in and then send those out in priority order to a small number of people who can help, take care of the things that the AI can't. I think this is a fantastic idea. It's going to lead to less food safety incidents. It's going to lead to less OSHA violations. It's going to lead to less deaths. It's going to lead to higher productivity, less product loss, less food waste. I truly, truly believe that as much as this might seem like a scary thing, this is absolutely a positive.
And I guess this task is something that primarily would have fallen on the manager. That would have been the person. And speaking as as someone who has definitely worked in the management space, like managing one of these things, like that does seem like something that could be kind of like automated away. Like just I want to watch and judge how people are doing. And sometimes people don't like being managed by a machine and who's just watching at all times and evaluating things because of that human component. But it is potentially a way to contend, especially, there's a lot of rules recently or laws that have come into place around minimum wage, and we keep trying to hike it up for good or for bad, but companies have to figure out, again, how can they survive and keep their prices reasonable by this, and they're going to have to cut costs somewhere, and I guess maybe managing a Pizza Hut's another job that's going to fall off the list as the AI.
Overloading the term AI a bit more, we think a lot here about large language models. Something that's going to automatically buy ingredients when you get low or help manage shifts. There's plenty of software that already does that could, by some definition of the term, use AI to take all of your employees and say, oh, you should probably hire one more person because of such and such amount of coverage, and here is an optimal schedule that manages everybody's wants and desires instead of having to do that by hand or buy ingredients because I'm low on lettuce, and the person in charge of that particular Taco Bell doesn't need to go back and count the bags of lettuce. There's a fancy scale that you put all the lettuce on, and now the scale's reading X pounds. My wife likes coffee. She has a little scale. I don't remember the name of the company, otherwise I'd plug them. But it's a little scale, and then they send you a bag of coffee, and you put the bag of coffee on the scale, and it checks once a day or whatever how much coffee's left in the bag. And then it automatically orders you a new bag of coffee whenever it's getting low. Using AI to see, it's been number of days since the last one. They're being consistent. It's X number of ounces per day tends to be lost. There's a 99% chance more will show up, within X number of days of it running out, or whatever the criteria that they have is. Sure, that's AI. Let's absolutely do more of that. I want that for my cooking oil. Give me 100 of those little scales all throughout my house. I'm drinking one right now. This episode not brought to you by, but enjoyed amongst Spindrift. I love these things. I suck them down like it's nobody's business. Give me 8 of those little scales, and I'll put my 12 packs upright on them. And then as it goes down, if I pre-order some more through Target or whatever app or something, that would be awesome. Let's absolutely put AI into more stuff like that.
There's a Chinese coffee chain Cody Coffee that's introducing a coffee making robot. I wonder if this passes your test for is it or is it not real AI, because they do suggest that both supervised and unsupervised learning was leveraged in the creation of these robots. Although I do not believe they suggest that you can have conversations with them. Again, I'm not still sure exactly where you draw the line.
Well, there are in various airports, you might see here is a big coffee machine, and some of them have like a fancy arm, and it makes it look like it's more of a whole process. And they're, in my experience, 50% of the time out of service. Tea culture is a very cultural thing. I think if you want to go to a tea house, there's a ceremony literal ceremonies in some cases associated with like getting this thing. That's a very human experience. I think you might be able to have, from a novelty perspective or from a volume perspective, something that can pump out tea more often. But also a Keurig machine can make you, with the little K-cups, a quick coffee or a quick tea type thing. But we're making a distinction between those. A tea house isn't a Keurig. You want something that's going to go through the whole rigmarole of getting you a nice cup of Joe or of tea or of whatever. I think that's something that robots won't be able to infringe on outside of novelty. And people will go for the novelty, but not everyone. I think a small percentage of people will be like, yeah, I love going to robot tea houses. And nearly everyone else who would go to a tea house will go to a real one where real people are going to be doing that, because that's what you're going there for. It's a different product. It's not the tea that you're going there for.
You're going for the ceremony.
I think so. I think this is a gimmick.
And it's funny because, to some degree, ceremony is a gimmick. By definition.
Right. Yep. But like, I want
ceremony implies a lot of tradition, right? And so it's hard to break the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it erodes over time. But it probably requires a substantially better product in order to erode it.
Mm-hmm. There is a level of quality that would be associated with a good tea house. Maybe there's a person who's been serving tea for 15 years and they're really, really proficient at the specific things you're supposed to. I have no idea what you do in like a real tea house, but I vaguely am self-aware, of there's a lot of literal ceremony to it, and like specific, you have to pour it into this at a specific time or swish the whatever around. You could get a robot to do that very, very precisely, and that exhibits zero of the magic of what it's supposed to be. Is this a difference between a Rolls Royce, which is hand assembled, versus a production line car? At a broad level, I guess, yes, but they're ultimately two different products. Even if both are cars or both are tea, you're going for the thing that you want. And granted, some of them have a tremendous cost associated.
Yeah,
It's
and I guess
trade-off.
there's a corollary there with knockoffs, right? Like, because you can buy a really compelling knockoff of a Rolex or a designer bag where
Right.
you've got to really study to tell the difference. I mean, there are there are low quality knockoffs, but they're high quality knockoffs. But you still want the one that was actually made by the company with the values and the history. Like everybody wants the real one. I don't think anyone's like, I don't. Given the choice, they'll take the real one.
Sure. Yeah. Most people, most of the time, we're kind of like LLMs and such. If you have a super expensive watch, you might be at more risk of being mugged, for example. So, there's a trade-off. Diamonds are exactly the same sort of thing. Lab-grown diamonds are superior in every way. They're cheaper. They're literally better. And now the diamond industry has had to start saying, oh, it's the imperfections that really make it a real diamond. And that's why you should buy them. And then the labs were like, cool, we introduced X% of imperfections and we did imperfections better than you. And some people have to have real diamonds. If it wasn't, if a child's blood wasn't involved in extracting it out of the ground, I don't want it. Fine. Sort of. I don't think that people should. I'm like, personally, I don't think we should be doing extracted diamonds anymore. Let's just use the lab ones. They're literally better, cheaper, whatever. But some people say, I want that experience. I want the real thing, even if they couldn't tell the difference. Coffee, sure, like robots, at least for now, look very, very different from people. If you could get to the point where it's indistinguishable, now we're talking kind of more like the LLMs again at that point. Does it matter as much? Maybe not. We're going to blur a lot of lines in the years to come.
Well, this next robot or maybe AI agent, which, by the way, I called BS on several years ago, belongs to none other than Amazon, who had a chain of grocery stores where you would just walk in, pick whatever you want, place it into your cart, walk out, and in theory, not in theory, there were cameras everywhere filming you. And in theory, a AI machine learning model was figuring out what you had selected and placed into your basket and would figure out what you owed and just charge it to your Amazon account as you walked out the door. And it has come out now that there was actually a very large team in India watching the video streams and just marking down what you purchased from the grocery store. And that is how the totals were actually generated. And this came as a revelation as Amazon announced they are removing this technology from their stores.
Yeah. Any
Did
ML,
you ever go to one of these?
I went to one once, and it was a really weird experience. There was a security guard like by the thing saying, "Yep, just leave." Okay. I expect there was ML involved with like, this camera knows these products are in these places and sees a hand go there and now sees this row change. They must have grabbed at least one, or another camera sees, oh, they have 1, 2, however many objects. But there's so many edge cases. Oh, what if there's a short person next to me and I reach up and I grab a thing and hand it to them? And it might charge me. From what I read online, this kind of thing happened a lot. And maybe it's only the edge cases that it identified. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that you're sending off to the team in India to look at. But it turns out we're not ready for just grab your stuff and walk out and get charged appropriately.
I've worked at a lot of companies over the last 10 years which have an AI premise. We are using AI to do the following, but the reality is that the AI is not nearly accurate enough to do that. Like, so it's not that a model doesn't exist, but it's just that the reality is that the output that you're looking at most likely passed through the hands of several humans, whereas as a customer, you would assume that it was a purely automated process. And in the early days of most of these companies, it's almost entirely just, again, human labeled data that you are interacting with. Or, there's humans that are, and when I went to the store, so I went to the flagship, or the first store that they'd opened. I don't know if you'd call it the flagship store. It's right across from their headquarters in Seattle. You go in, you have to scan your hand. They have that thing yet? I don't think they did. I think it was just you used the app, your Amazon app, the first time you went in, and you can go around and shop and put the things in your cart. There in the ceilings, there's cameras everywhere, And then on a lot of things, you can see that there's sensors. So when you take something off of a shelf, it clearly has a sensor. Okay, so it makes sense that sort of triggers.
Sure.
But what like really just raised my spidey sense is I walked out. I didn't have many things. I maybe like 5 things. I went in there for novelty, just check it out. And I got my bill like 3 hours later. I was like,
Instead
hold
of about
on
3
a
seconds
second.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do anything fishy. I wasn't trying to confuse it at all. You know, I again just took very obvious items off the cart. I didn't take things and put them back, but that just reeked of a human in the loop. That 3 hour delay between my purchase and my receipt.
And it doesn't mean it was completely just people. Those people probably had a ML powered, this is his likely cart based on what we've seen. And then they had to edit it. And that exact kind of thing you and I have both dealt with at multiple companies where there is an ML system that people have to review, and X% of the time it's right for X and Y and Z use cases.
It's kind of like the Sora video we were Balloon Boy. It's not entirely AI generated.
Right.
There's actually a number of humans in the loop towards the creation of these things.
Should companies have to do that sort of thing where now that we're having, we'll say, generative AI labels slapped on things like images or text or video or audio, and we joked a bit earlier of like, okay, this one we thought was human, was AI, but actually it was also people. Should all products have to have a like the thing that we're selling as AI actually has a human component versus none? Because I feel like basically all of them have at least a potential human intervention step. So
it's sort of like we have requirements for nutrition labels and ingredients labels on things.
Yeah.
And that's primarily for health reasons. I don't know any other reasons.
Right.
And we have requirements for labels about things. Well, that's health too, right? This may contain cancer,
right,
related products or products that could impact you. Sort of health and safety concerns are things that we legislate must have labels and be properly labeled. We don't tend to require labels for things that may be ethical concerns for you. You might want to stop and consider whether you purchase this product or not, depending upon your moral compass.
Sure, they do.
What are examples?
Do. Vegan.
There's a government regulation on.
Well, food is regulated fairly and a lot, shall we say? I don't know to what degree, but.
You're not required to label something as vegan.
No, I don't think you have to, but I suspect if you do label something as vegan, it has to be.
I'm commenting just on should there be regulation that you must label it. Not is there potential value in labeling something as 100% human generated or a mix of human and AI generated and 100% AI generated. Like maybe,
but like coming at from the other end, it's two ends of the same line here. One is looking at it from the lens of should all of them have it versus if it has it, should it be labeled? And so for the thing of like a vegan food or you say that something's gluten-free and then it isn't, and then someone has it and then they die, like that's gonna be pretty bad. There's some lawsuits involved in that at very least. I wonder if you should say, this thing that we claim to be ML has a human component or could have a human component. And there are safety-related reasons. Like, let's say that you're looking at a construction
the peanuts
site.
May have been used in this factory, kind of like line.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Humans may have been exposed to this.
Yeah, humans may have been exposed to this ML observation. And that way, like, is that almost like a seal of approval kind of thing where, this 3D printed house was reviewed by a person, even though the ML thing is going to pass muster 90 whatever percent of time, a person looked at this one. I feel like that would probably be a selling point for people.
I think it could
depending
be
on the kind of product or service.
Here's how I think it could become a regulation. So there are lots of discussions around automation taxes to companies. Okay. You automate a significant amount of your workforce. Congrats to you, but you are going to have to pay a higher tax on that automation. You can't just run the computer 24 hours a day like Hunter wants to do.
Well, that's why you just lay off people instead.
Yes, but the more you automate, the automation taxes are the greater percentage that you've automated. Your tax bracket's essentially going to increase. Okay. And so I could imagine a regulation around on your products. You must label to what degree their creation was automated versus done by humans, and this disclosure could be required because of these automation taxes. Now, for the record, I'm against the automation tax. I don't want to. You can be for it, but I'm against it. But I can't imagine a future where there is an automation tax, because there's a degree of logic to it, and that labels on what degree this product was automated versus human involvement. This was 22% human and 80% AI.
Sure. Yeah.
That sounds plausible to me.
Yeah. Vehicles, we were talking about assembly lines before. This is an entirely automated line, and so the cars might end up cheaper, but maybe you want to only get cars where people were involved X% of the time. It's almost like an X% American made versus head show in Mexico or something like that. For an AI art thing, instead of just a label saying AI was used, maybe it could say here was the amount of collaboration, or like AI was used in the creation of this, but also a person was a little robot / human, kind of symbol to say like, look, people were involved at some point, even if it was just touch-ups. There's a really famous painter. There's lots of like idyllic landscapes, and I think maybe Thomas Kincaid.
Yeah.
So there's a zillion of these paintings, and there's a lot of people that go and like add paint to a print to make it look more real, and then there's like the higher level painters who will go and add more detailed touches. How is that much different from a mid-journey image that someone then goes into and changes some stuff in Photoshop? To me, were people involved? A printer printed an existing thing, and then maybe people touched it up a bunch, or added significant things and altered stuff, and those go up in price. And then you could say, here's a mid-journey generated idyllic landscape, or a mid-journey idyllic landscape, and a person spent 1 hour changing things, and you could see the diff between them, and like the person gets to charge X amount more because of that, or maybe just the market demands, that they do or don't pay more. But like that's a way that you could incorporate people and ML and artistic creations in a way that everyone's kind of getting some credit where credit's due, I guess, or not due, as the case may be.
Yeah. And I think I'm coming around, and again, I still don't like it, but I'm coming around that it probably is part of our future, the requirement that you label the output of the product that you're selling. And I can also see it being a precursor to the automation tax. Just like, in last episode, we were talking about requirements on disclosing when you're using AI models, if you use any copywritten material in them, and that it's not passed yet, but that there's legislation moving through Congress right now that would require this disclosure. I can again imagine a similar disclosure that you're required to disclose the amount of automation that was leveraged in the creation of any product that you sell. So that again, right, because the government's trying to get a hold on this and understand how much, we still don't really know, again, how much of this is BS and AI is replacing all the jobs. We believe that the future's there, but today, what percentage of our job force is actively being cut because of AI? And the reason that we don't know is we don't have the data. How much of all these products are being automated away? Today, this product is 5% automation and 95% human. And then if we did have that data, we would be able to make more informed decisions and better account for our future. It's a gross invasion of privacy, to be very clear, but it does feel a little bit inevitable as we now speak about it.
Yeah. I don't see us not going at least some amount of down that path.
Well, at least until we become self-aware. And then there's no predicting what happens next. But that doesn't mean that we won't try in the very next episode, on episode 11 of They Might Be Self-Aware. And I guess until next time, but if you haven't, if you like what you're hearing, why don't you subscribe? It's free. We charge nothing for this. We just give it away. $1 billion ideas just given away. Hit the subscribe button wherever you are. There most likely is one. We're on every platform that podcasts are prevalent. You can likely find us there.
5 stars. All kinds of ways you can tell us you like us. Give us some training data. Review. Lots of training data. Until next time, I am Hunter Powers, and I'm Daniel Bishop.
All right, Daniel.
See you next time.
They might be self-aware.